LegacyMaker, the All Sports Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mock Draft Monday. I am your host, Cody Stewart, and this is on the LegacyMaker Sports Network. If you can't tell, I'm super excited. We are 17 days away from my favorite time of the year, the NFL Draft. Some may wonder, why is it my favorite time of the year? Likely because my favorite NFL team is normally eliminated from the playoffs by November. So I have to look forward to who could we possibly get in about 6 months to make our team better. So I'm very excited for this. This is a loaded NFL draft this year. Positions are deep, like cornerback, like wide receiver. So I'm just ready for it. What I'm going to be doing today is going to be a GM for all the teams that have a first round pick. It's only 24 teams with the first round pick this year. There are 8 teams that have multiple first round picks via trade. I think that might be a record, honestly, in the NFL for the most teams with most picks in a draft. So, or in the first round, I should say. So, like I said, I'm going to be the GM for each of these teams. So what that simply means is this isn't me predicting this is where this guy is going to go come 17 days from now. This is me saying, if I'm the GM for each of these teams, this would be the pick I make on how the draft board falls. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this thing. So with the first pick in the NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who seems to have it every single year, they have that pick this year. Looking at it, there's a lot of different ways that they could go with this, but looking at who they have at quarterback, they have franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I truly expect them, or if I was the GM, I would go and I would shore up that offensive line even more. I know that they franchise tagged Cam Robinson this offseason, and they also spent some big money on Brandon Scherff from the Washington Commanders. So that is a good start. But the money that Cam Robinson is going to be getting, that's not his talent compared to the money that he'd be getting, that they don't match. And with the first pick, if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would take Evan Neal. So with that, Evan Neal is the most versatile offensive lineman in this year's draft. He played every single position on the Alabama Crimson Tide outside of the center position. So you look at it, you could still have Cam Robinson start at left tackle this year. And you could easily throw Evan Neal into one of the guard positions if you want, or even over to right tackle. But when it's all said and done, I can definitely see Evan Neal becoming the franchise left tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that's going to be huge for Trevor Lawrence, of course, because Trevor Lawrence showed a lot of flashes last year, showed he should have been that number 1 overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft. So you shore up that offensive line to give Trevor Lawrence more time to throw the ball. And that's just going to help the Jaguars out offensively. So moving on to the second pick that is held by the Detroit Lions. So with the Detroit Lions, I had them going with Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge out of Oregon. This is my top-rated edge in this year's draft. A lot of people have Aiden Hutchinson, which I understand. He had a very good year this year for the Michigan Wolverines, and I'll get to him a little later in this draft. But Kayvon Thibodeau, this guy is an absolute monster. He reminds me of a stronger and faster Mario Williams, who was drafted by the Houston Texans about 16 years ago. He had 10 sacks and 21 and a half tackles for losses over the last 2 years. But what you have to keep in mind is the year before last in 2020, that was a year that was cut short due to COVID. I look at Detroit. One of their biggest needs on a team that has a lot of holes is the edge position. Last year, Detroit ranked 30th in sacks combined last year. So they definitely need an edge presence to get to the likes of Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, and Justin Fields. So moving on to the third overall pick, that's held by the Houston Texans. This might be the first surprise of the draft just based off of where a lot of mocks have this guy going. But I have the Houston Texans taking Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. This is a guy, in my opinion, might be the best player in this draft. He's very athletic. He has great size, 6'4" in height, 220 pounds in weight, just an overall playmaker. He was the heart and soul of that Notre Dame defense last year. A lot of people have him pushed down in this draft due to his 40 time that he's been running in the combine and at his pro day, which was around a 4.59. And it doesn't make too much sense to me why people are dropping him because of that. There was a guy who, in my opinion, is the best safety to ever play in the NFL, Ed Reed. He ran a 4.57 at his combine. And then another top 5 safety of all time, Brian Dawkins, ran a 4.61. So speed isn't everything. It really is all about the game speed, and Kyle Hamilton has that. The Texans definitely need a playmaker on defense as they lost Eric Reed this year to the Kansas City Chiefs. So they definitely need somebody to be able to come in, make plays for their defense, and be an overall locker room leader. So moving on to the fourth pick, we have the New York Jets. The New York Jets, this might be another surprise pick for some based off of the position that they're taking this high. But I have them going with Ahmad Sauce Gardner, cornerback out of Cincinnati. I love this player as well. You're going to hear that a lot in this draft. This is, like I said, this is a very loaded draft. It is deep in a lot of positions, and defensive back is one of them. But I had the Jets taking Ahmad Gardner, number one, because I absolutely love his size. A 6'3" corner that has 33.5-inch arms. He should be able to disrupt any pass that comes his way. He has the speed to stay with most wide receivers in the league. And speaking of speed, that is something that the Jets are going to need in the secondary, looking at who they are going against as far as the wide receivers in their division, like Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle, and now Tyreek Hill. One thing that I love about Ahmad Gardner is, number one, he didn't allow a touchdown in college, which is great. And a lot of people might look at that and say, well, he only played at Cincinnati. But he also played against teams like Notre Dame. He played against Alabama in the college football playoffs, and he held his own. The other thing I like about him is who he reminds me of. He reminds me of a mesh of Antonio Cromartie and Jalen Ramsey together. I really do believe that he's going to be a lockdown corner in this league, and that is one thing that the Jets have been needing since Darrelle Revis. With the fifth pick in this year's draft, we're moving to the New York Giants. And it's absolutely no secret the New York Giants need offensive line help. The only offensive lineman that they have on their roster right now that has shown that he deserves to be on the roster and that he's going to be a good player for years to come is Andrew Thomas. And he is at the most important position on the offensive line at left tackle, but they still need to fill in some more of those spots. So with the fifth pick, I had them taking Akeem Ekwonu, offensive tackle from NC State. This is a guy who, when you watch the tape, compared to what you see maybe in interviews. In interviews, you see a basically a big teddy bear, just a very nice young man. But on the field, this dude has a nasty switch that he turns on. He absolutely mauls over people. He loves to just get at it against the defenders that he goes against. He just brings an attitude that this New York Giants offensive line has been missing for quite some time. I just look at it with, if I'm the GM of the New York Giants, if I'm giving Daniel Jones one more shot to really show me what he has, I have to shore up that offensive line for him so that he has the protection and the time in the pocket to deliver the throws that he has shown that he can make from time to time. So moving on to the 6th pick, that is held by the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, this is another team like the New York Giants that desperately need some offensive line help. And I have them going with Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. Charles Cross, this is another guy who has a mean switch with him. He plays offensive tackle, but if need be, you could move him into the guard position. But I know a lot of people will look at the Carolina Panthers, and they've been saying over the years, even after trading for Sam Darnold, that they do need a quarterback. You got to get that foundation straight first. Before you bring in a quarterback, you need to get that offensive line straightened out so that the quarterback that you decide is going to be your franchise guy for the next decade plus has a foundation, has a pocket to throw in. And Charles Cross is definitely the start of that for Carolina to take him. With the 7th pick, we're going back to the New York Giants. This is the first team that is making their 2nd pick in the 1st round. They got this via the Chicago Bears in last year's draft via trade when the Chicago Bears traded up for Justin Fields. I have the New York Giants getting yet another position that they desperately need, and that is on the edge and defense. I have them going Jermaine Johnson II, edge out of Florida State. One of the things that I find most interesting about Jermaine Johnson is he was actually part of the Georgia Bulldogs back in 2020, I believe, but he was not getting the playing time that he thought he deserved. So he decided to enter the transfer portal, and he transferred to Florida State. And with him transferring to Florida State, he ended up having 12 sacks last year, 18 tackles for a loss, and he won ACC Defensive Player of the Year. So he did well for himself. He made the right move to go ahead and transfer down to Florida State, and now he is definitely a projected top 10 pick. I look at Jermaine Johnson, and he has a very similar frame and measurements to Kayvon Thibodeau, who went 2nd overall in this mock to the Detroit Lions. I just look at this New York Giants team. This is a team that over the past 7 seasons, they've only had 2 guys in 2 separate seasons have over 10 sacks. Normally, you're looking for a star defensive end on a team to get that 10-plus sacks a year, and that's something that the Giants haven't had. They've actually finished 22nd or worse in total sacks, 5 over the last 7 seasons. So once again, to say edge is a need is a big understatement there. Moving on to the number 8 overall pick that is held by the Atlanta Falcons. I have them going with an edge as well, and the slide actually stops. Aiden Hutchinson, edge from Michigan, goes to the Atlanta Falcons here. A lot of people have Aiden Hutchinson as their top edge in this year's draft. I do think he's going to be a good player in the NFL, but the reason that I didn't have him going as the top edge or the top 2 edges is because while he did have production last season for the Michigan Wolverines, where he racked up 14 sacks and 16 and a half tackles for losses, he didn't have that much production in previous years. And when you look at the Michigan Wolverines and you look at their defense that they had last year in 2021, they had the likes of David Ojabo, Daxton Hill, and Josh Ross on that defense, who are all great defensive players. So it makes me somewhat question, was Aiden Hutchinson's stats just a product of the defense that he was able to play in and around as far as the players go that was on that Michigan Wolverines defense? But still, the Atlanta Falcons, they desperately need edge rushers as well. I look at it, they ranked dead last in total sacks last season. They only had 18 sacks, so if you're doing the math there, they barely cracked averaging 1 sack a game, which you're expecting a lot more than that. Moving on to the number 9 overall pick, we have the Seattle Seahawks. This is a team that was able to acquire this draft pick from the Denver Broncos in that Russell Wilson trade this offseason. I have the Seattle Seahawks trying to get back to that quote-unquote Legion of Boom defense that they had about 7-8 years ago. I had them going Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback out of LSU. They already have Jamal Adams there at safety. They need another corner there to really kind of be an island, be a shutdown corner, because again, just like I had with the Jets taking Sauce Gardner going against those top receivers in the AFC East, you have to look at the Seattle Seahawks, and they play in a very tough division in the NFC West, going against the likes of DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel. So the Seattle Seahawks definitely need some playmaking ability in that cornerback and secondary department of their team, and Derek Stingley definitely fits that bill. I mean, when you just look at LSU in general, they are DBU. They produce the top corners in this league, and Derek Stingley, his draft stock has fallen over the past year or so due to injury, but he is fully healed from that Liz Frank injury. He posted a sub 4.40 at his pro day that he held I want to say it was about a week ago. So I have him still as a top 10 pick right here. Derek Stingley goes to the Seattle Seahawks. With the number 10 overall pick, we are at the New York Jets. This would be the second team that has a second first-round pick in this year's draft. I have them going with Trayvon Walker, edge out of Georgia. Again, we saw it with the number 4 overall pick. They went ahead and shored up that secondary with Sauce Gardner. Now they need to get somebody that can get to the quarterback. They need to get Josh Allen on the ground. They need to get Mac Jones on the ground. And Trayvon Walker should be a guy that can step up and do that for the New York Jets. Trayvon Walker, he has great size. He reminds me of a true defensive end. You see a lot of edges nowadays who are about 6'3", 6'4", that weigh about 245, 250. Trayvon Walker, 6'5", 275. He can put his hand in the dirt. He can stand on the edge and attack you while standing up. The reason that I had him falling this low, because it does seem like a lot of GMs and scouts around the league have Trayvon Walker going a lot higher in the draft. The reason I have him so low, or this low, is due to the fact, just like Aiden Hutchinson, you look at Trayvon Walker and you look at the defense that he played on and the guys he played with. Trayvon Walker was able to play with guys like Jordan Davis, Devontae Wynn, guys on that defensive line that made his life a lot easier as they were taking on double teams all the time. And then you also look at his production at Georgia in general. He had 9.5 sacks in the 3 seasons there. You're expecting a lot more from an edge if you're going to take him in the top 10. But I do believe he definitely has that potential. He has a high ceiling. And like I said, the New York Jets definitely need an edge presence to get after those top quarterbacks in the AFC. So with the 11th pick, we get to the Washington Commanders. And I look at this Washington team as a team that has the pieces on defense. Offensively, they've been playing musical chairs when it comes to their quarterback. We all know that they made that trade for Carson Wentz about a month or so ago, and they're taking on his full contract. So that tells me that they're going to be sticking with Carson Wentz for at least 2 years. So what does Carson Wentz need? Well, he needs somebody outside of Terry McLaurin who gets double and triple teamed all the time. And Terry needs another piece to complement him so that he's not always double and triple teamed. So I have them taking a fellow Buckeye and Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from Ohio State. Garrett Wilson, he had a breakout year last year for the Ohio State Buckeyes, 70 receptions, over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. This is a very crisp route runner. He has good speed. That Ohio State connection with him and Terry can easily put him under his wing, teach him the ropes about the league, and Garrett Wilson can have a stellar career just like Terry has had in his first 3 years. And like I said, this is definitely something that's going to be needed for Carson Wentz. I feel like Washington has their running back with Antonio Gibson. They have Terry McLaurin. The Curtis Samuel experiment, I know that he signed, I think, a 3 or 4 year deal last season, but he didn't really have a stellar performance last year due to injuries for the Washington Commanders. So they definitely need to add another piece. That's why I have them taking Garrett Wilson. With the 12th pick in this year's draft, the Minnesota Vikings are up. And when you think about the Vikings, you think about defense, you think about the purple people eaters. I have them going Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, Georgia. This is a huge specimen. When I tell you, this is a guy that it honestly would not surprise me if he goes into the top 10. He's 6'6", 341 pounds. He ran a 4.78 40. Nobody that's big should be running that fast. He has very good lateral movement, and he's just an absolute clog in the middle of any defensive line, which is going to help out in the run game, of course, but also it's going to take off a lot of pressure for the defensive ends and edges to get to the quarterback. Moving on to the 13th pick in this year's draft, the Houston Texans are up. This will be their second first-round pick that they're making. The first pick, I had them going Kyle Hamilton. I had them doubling up as far as defensive backs go. I had them going Andrew Booth Jr., quarterback out of Clemson. Andrew Booth has great size. He played very well at Clemson. And we know that the Houston Texans have been they've been missing a very good lockdown quarterback for quite some time. You look at the Texans and you look at what they've lost over the years as far as defensive goes in general. J.J. Watt gone, Tyrann Mathieu gone. I just feel like you add Kyle Hamilton, who can be a playmaker and basically be that captain of the defense, can roam the field. And then you have Andrew Booth being able to lock up opposing wide receivers on one side of the field. You go ahead, double up on defensive back. And they still have a plethora of picks after they made that trade with the Cleveland Browns for Deshaun Watson, or they traded Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns. That's how they got this pick 13. So they'll be able to take some great players in the second round and more. Moving on to the 14th pick, the Baltimore Ravens are sitting there. And when you look at Baltimore, kind of like Minnesota, you think of their defense, you look at that defensive line that they have. They had a big loss this offseason with losing nose tackle Brandon Williams. I just feel like they're going to miss his presence. They're going to want to plug that nose tackle position back up, plug that middle of the defensive line back up. I have them going Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle out of Georgia. Just like his counterpart in Jordan Davis, his teammate, Devontae Wyatt has great size, 6'3", 305 pounds. Again, he also has quick lateral movement that's going to help beat blocks and get to the running backs that are trying to run right up the gut. Baltimore, they almost kind of seem like they're going through a transition on defense. They lost their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. They lost some key pieces on their defensive line. So adding Devontae Wyatt should be able to get that defense back up and running and clog in the middle, stopping runners like we're used to seeing. Moving on to the 15th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles are up, and I have them going after a position that I feel is a big need for them. They do have a lockdown corner in Darius Slay on one side, but that's it. The rest of the secondary hasn't necessarily played like we expected them to. So I have them going with Kaiir Elam, quarterback out of Florida. Looking at it, I think that this is a guy who, again, I think that he's going to be able to develop into a very good corner. He had a down season last year for Florida. It kind of looked like he tried to change up his technique a little bit from what he was used to. So maybe he didn't have enough trust in it. But getting to an NFL team, being able to be under Darius Slay's wing, Darius will be able to show him the ropes. And another thing I like about him is he's the son of former Baltimore Raven defensive back Matt Elam. Obviously he has that NFL pedigree in his bloodline. And again, he has great size. He'll be able to work on that technique. And again, Darius Slay, he's only one man. He's not going to be able to do it all for the Philadelphia Eagles in that secondary. And Kaiir Elam, that should definitely help them out big time. Moving on to the 16th overall pick, we have the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints, they made a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles last week where they basically gave up a future first-round pick and switched around one of their first-round picks in this year's draft to get this pick and also the 19th overall pick from the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot of people look at their offseason. They see that they lost a lot of offensive linemen, and they do need to shore up that offensive line. But one thing that was killing them last year was they did not really have any sort of receiving threat. Michael Thomas was out for the year last year, and it showed mightily. for the New Orleans Saints. So with the 16th overall pick, I have the New Orleans Saints taking Jameson Williams, wide receiver out of Alabama. Some might look at this and they see Jameson Williams, he's coming off of an ACL tear. So, of course, there's going to be a little cause of concern there. But when healthy, this guy is an absolute beast. In my opinion, he's a perfect blend of two of his former teammates. That's Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. He has the speed. He has the crisp route running. You get a healthy Michael Thomas with a healthy Jameson Williams on the field together. The opposing secondaries aren't going to be able to sleep the night before the game because it's almost kind of like pick your poison. So I had the New Orleans Saints going with Jameson Williams at wide receiver. That is a big need for them. At 17, at the 17th pick in this year's draft, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. I had them going with Trevor Penning, offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. I look at the Los Angeles Chargers, and this is a team that showed me this offseason they're all in. They traded for Khalil Mack. They signed J.C. Jackson. They basically gotten that defense straight. You look on the offensive side, they still have Keenan Allen. They still have Austin Eckler. They were able to re-sign Mike Williams. This is a team that I feel they have all the pieces. The only thing that they're missing is some offensive line support. We all know that they drafted Rashawn Slater last year, who turned out to be one of the best picks in last year's draft. But now you need to get somebody opposite him so that your franchise young quarterback, Justin Herbert, can stay in the pocket, stay straight up, make those throws to Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, whoever. I really think that is going to be the guy that they go after. And I'm not going to give too much away, but I do want to say that in next week's Mock Draft Monday, I'm going to have one where I'm going to be introducing trades that I can definitely see happening this year. This is definitely a team that I have at the top of my list that would 100% trade up into the top 10 to get a guy. So just keep that in mind for next week's episode. At 18, we are back to the Philadelphia Eagles. And if I'm their GM, I see, a lot of turnover that's happened on their offensive line over the last couple of years. You lose Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey. It almost seemed like he was going to retire, but he re-signs. But we all know that he's getting towards the end of his career. They did spend a second-round draft pick on Landon Dickerson out of Alabama last year, who is one of their projected guards. But I see him sliding to center once Kelsey retires. So I actually have them going offensive line in this draft and going with my top inside offensive lineman, Zion Johnson out of Boston College. This is a guy right here. He's 6'3". I don't even need to say his weight. I'm just going to say wide. This is the guy that you get on your team, you put him in an offensive guard, and he ends up having a career, in my opinion, like a Zach Martin. I feel like this is a guy who is going to be able to come in for Philadelphia. He's going to be able to start, obviously, from day one. I mean, you're not going to spend a first-round pick on a guy who's not. But he's going to be able to become one of the leaders on this offensive line. And if I'm the Eagles, I'm looking at it. You want to give Jalen Hurts, a true opportunity to show what he has with him going into year 3. You shore up this offensive line. And at the very least, if Jalen Hurts doesn't produce, you have a very strong foundation for either somebody you're going to draft in 2023 or somebody you're going to pick up via free agency. Moving on to the 19th overall pick, we are at the New Orleans Saints again. And I saw a comment come through from James Brown saying no quarterbacks taken yet. Well, boom, here we go. First quarterback off the board. I have the New Orleans Saints taking Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. Now, again, people might look at this and say they lost some offensive line pieces in this offseason. They need to shore that back up. I totally understand that. But I look at Malik Willis. I look at what he's able to do. He's a dual threat quarterback. He has a cannon for an arm. Being able to play in a dome, you have the pieces with Michael Thomas, and if they go with how I drafted Jameson Williams, you have Alvin Kamara in the backfield. I mean, this should be an absolute home run pick for the New Orleans Saints. I do think that the Saints botched their what they were going to do after or life after Drew Brees, because the Taysom Hill experiment didn't work. I understand signing Jameson Winston, but he's shown that he's having some durability issues after coming off an ACL tear last year. If Malik Willis is still on the board on that with that second first-round pick that the New Orleans Saints have, they got to go Malik Willis. So moving on to the 20th overall pick, we are at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Kenyon Green, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. He is projected at offensive guard, and I do see that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers would use them. I just feel like that's one thing that Pittsburgh has done well in their franchise existence. It's you've had a good defensive line, you've had a good offensive line. The trenches were always good, but it seems like they've kind of come over the past couple years. I don't know if it was a mixture of just having Big Ben kind of like a statue in the backfield, not being able to really run, or if the offensive line just hasn't been up to par. But I really do feel like they need to get this offensive line straight, and adding Kenyon Green to that would definitely be a big win. That's going to help Mitch Trubisky, who they signed this offseason. And again, if Mitch Trubisky doesn't work, this still gives you a great foundation for that offensive line for whoever you decide to go with in 2023 or further. And before I move on to this next pick, I just want to say RIP to Dwayne Haskins, 24 years old, a young guy, man, had the world ahead of him. I think he was only in like his third or fourth year in the league. Very tragic accident that happened over the weekend. So just RIP to Dwayne Haskins, and love and prayers out to his family. Moving on to the 21st overall pick, we are at the New England Patriots. And I actually have them going with Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. I think Devin Lloyd is the exact piece that Bill Belichick needs on that defense. He was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year last year. He has great size, speed, and awareness. He can cover running backs and tight ends, along with being able to rush the passer. And you look at what New England has done over the past couple of off seasons. They've moved on from key pieces like J.C. Jackson, Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy. I just really feel like they need to find an identity on that defense, and Devin Lloyd definitely fits that bill. He would be an instant leader on that team, in that locker room, and he's a dynamic player. He can change that defense overnight. Moving on to the 22nd overall pick, we are at the Green Bay Packers. They were able to get this pick via the Las Vegas Raiders in that Devontae Adams trade. So you trade probably the best wide receiver in the league. What do you do with that pick? You got to go wide receiver. So I had them taking Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. Drake London, he probably has the best size out of all the receivers in this year's draft. He stands at 6'4". He's 220 pounds. Had a hell of a year last year for USC. He totaled 88 receptions, over 1,000 yards receiving, and had 7 touchdowns. And all of that was while missing 4 games. So no telling what the numbers would have looked like had he played all the games last year. Like I said, though, Green Bay moves on from Devontae Adams. You're looking at their depth chart now. They let MVS walk. He actually signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. So as the number 1 wide receiver on the roster, they have Allen Lazard or Randall Cobb. That's not going to get it done. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, but I don't think he could do anything with just those. So adding Drake London to this team, who would be an instant red zone threat as well with his big frame and body, this would be a home run pick for Green Bay if Drake London is still there at pick 22. Moving on to pick 23, we're at the Arizona Cardinals. I look at Arizona, and they probably had if we're talking about just losing somebody via free agency, probably the worst loss last year, and that was, or this offseason, and that's losing Chandler Jones. He has been one of the most disruptive edge rushers over the past 5-6 years. And they let him walk. He ends up signing with the Las Vegas Raiders. So I was thinking of going edge for the Arizona Cardinals, but I also look at the offensive side of the ball. Christian Kirk signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars. AJ Green, I believe they just went ahead and moved on from him. He might still be a free agent. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who has shown some durability issues, and you have an unproven Rondale Moore. I understand, I believe last year was his first year, his rookie year, but still, you don't know what you truly have in him. So with the 23rd overall pick, I had the Arizona Cardinals going Chris Olave, wide receiver, Ohio State. Just like his partner or his teammate in Ohio State and Garrett Wilson. He is a great route runner. He scored 13 touchdowns in 2021. Again, I feel like this would be a guy that's going to definitely help out Kyler Murray. I look at it with Kyler Murray. You have DeAndre Hopkins on one side. You could decide to put Chris on the other side and have Rondale Moore in the slot, or you could switch Chris and Rondale, have Chris in the slot, Rondale on the outside. Either way, adding another piece to that wide receiver core, adding another weapon for Kyler Murray is going to be huge for that team. I believe that they target the wide receiver position early on in this draft. At 24, we are at the Dallas Cowboys. When you think of the Dallas Cowboys, I would say probably from about 2013 to about 2019, you think of a great running attack, and all of that is due to having a great offensive line. When you fast forward to 2022, and you see a team where their left tackle is just getting older, he's showing durability issues. You lose your right tackle in Lyle Collins. He signs with the Cincinnati Bengals. You lose Connor McGovern. He goes down to the Miami Dolphins. So now all of a sudden you're looking at this Dallas Cowboys offensive line, who at one point was the best in the league, and now they might be middle of the pack at best. So with the 24th overall pick, I have the Dallas Cowboys taking Tyler Smith, offensive lineman out of Tulsa. He does project to be an offensive tackle, but this is somebody you could throw in at guard as well. They just need to find somebody not only to man the right side for right now, but you have to have some sort of succession plan in place for Tyron Smith when it's time for him to go ahead and hang up the cleats. Tyler Smith definitely fits that bill. 6'5", 325 pounds, 34-inch arms, so he's going to be able to go ahead, immediately punch you in the chest so that you can't get off the ball. This is just something that Dallas needs. You're looking at what they have in their running game. Ezekiel Elliott's been up and down. They do have a Jim and Tony Pollard, but the offensive line hasn't been top-notch. You add Tyler Smith to that, and maybe you can add another piece in maybe the third or fourth round, and now we're talking Dallas Cowboys possibly getting back into that top 10 as far as offensive line goes. Moving on to the 25th pick, we're at the Buffalo Bills. And this player I'm going to name that I have Buffalo taken, he might be my favorite player in this draft just based off of what we saw with early mock drafts coming out right before the college football season ended. A lot of them people had him going to maybe like the 5th or 6th round, but he shot up the boards with great combine, pro day. I had the Buffalo Bills at 25 overall taking Sky Moore, wide receiver out of Western Michigan. Sky Moore, 5'10", 200 pounds, ran a 4.4 140. Again, like I said, this is one of my favorite prospects. He's very similar to Sterling Shepard with his precise route running and sure hands. And one thing Buffalo needs, they lost Cole Beasley this year in the offseason, so they do need to find another slot receiver, and Sky Moore definitely fits that bill. This isn't a team, Buffalo's not a team that has that many needs. You know, they signed Von Miller this offseason. They signed Roger Saffold to the offensive line. You could say maybe they could add another secondary piece like a corner. But again, as I've said, corner is a very, very loaded position in this year's draft where they could definitely get one in the second round. You're giving Sky Moore you're giving Josh Allen another weapon offensively to complement Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis. This would be a home run pick for Buffalo. Moving on to the 26th pick, we're at the Tennessee Titans. This is a team that could definitely go a lot of different ways. They could kind of try to shore up that offensive line. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if they went quarterback. Ryan Tannehill has not really shown us anything. He's kind of that guy that can put up decent to good numbers in the regular season, but when the playoffs come, he's just nowhere to be found. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went quarterback here. But with me, if I'm the GM for the Tennessee Titans, I'm getting them somebody to complement A.J. Brown and that's going to be Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State. He stands 5'11". He ran a 4.43 40. We all know Tennessee traded for Julio Jones last year, and now this offseason, you fast forward to it, they cut Julio Jones. They did trade for Robert Woods, but we all know Robert Woods is still rehabbing an ACL injury, so we don't know exactly what Robert Woods we're going to get when he does come back this upcoming season. Dotson had 91 receptions last year, just shy of 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. I believe that this would be an instant impact player for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, they still have one of the best wide receivers in the game in A.J. Brown. They still have one of the best running backs in Derrick Henry. You just have to help Ryan Tannehill out and get him another weapon. So I think Jahan Dotson would definitely fit that bill. Moving on to the 27th overall pick, we are at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay got hit with a lot of offensive linemen either leaving via free agency or either retiring. So with the 27th overall pick, I have them taking Bernard Raymond, offensive lineman out of Central Michigan. He's 6'6", 305 pounds. I think one of the reasons why you don't see him in the top 15 to top 20 picks this year is due to his arm length. He has just above 32-inch arms, and you're normally expecting the offensive lineman to have about 33 and a half on up arms. So some people might say, that inch and a half isn't that big of a deal. When it comes to offensive linemen, they got to get their paws on that defensive lineman coming off the line, and sometimes that inch can really hurt you. So I just really feel like he would be able to come in. Again, he could play guard. He could play tackle if need be. We know that Tom Brady decided to unretire, so he is going to need some help on that offensive line to stay straight up. And again, we know Tom Brady's days are numbered in regards to his NFL life. He could retire after this year. He could retire in 2 years. Either way, you still need to get a foundation for whoever you're deciding to bring in after life from Tom Brady. Bernard Raymond, I think he would definitely do a superb job for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Moving on to 28, we're back to the Green Bay Packers, making their second first-round pick in this draft. And I actually have them going with George Karlaftis, edge out of Purdue. Again, you look at Green Bay, they lost Zadarius Smith this offseason. This is a team, they need to get more pressure on the quarterback. I believe they ranked 16th last year in sacks combined. And you look at this team, we know offensively they're fine. Defensively, they still play well. But one thing they need to do is they need to get after opposing quarterbacks. And George Karlaftis, he screams Green Bay Packer for me. I mean, we all know he played in the Big Ten, so maybe it's just, playing up north like that and going to a team up north in the Green Bay Packers. Maybe that's what it is. But I just look at this guy, and I could just see him coming in for Green Bay and absolutely wrecking havoc. He reminds me of a foe that Green Bay used to play against quite often, Jared Allen. I think that he has very similar stature, very similar game tape. So I think this would be a very great pick for the Green Bay Packers. Moving on to the 29th overall pick, we are at the Kansas City Chiefs. They were able to get this pick via Miami when they traded Tyreek Hill down to the Dolphins. I have them going with Tariq Woolen, quarterback out of UTSA. We all know that there's two big holes on this Kansas City Chiefs team. That's wide receiver and that's cornerback. You look at the AFC West, you look at the wide receivers that they have now in Devontae Adams, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I mean, that is a division that is stacked with top wide receivers. And Kansas City, they need somebody to go up against those guys. I think Tariq Woolen will be able to come in and make an impact for that team. He has great size as well. I think that he'll be able to be a number one cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs moving forward. At the 30th overall pick, we're sticking with the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them going with Christian Watson, wide receiver from North Dakota State. As I said previously, we know that their two biggest needs are quarterback and wide receiver, especially after trading Tyreek Hill. They did sign Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS in this year's offseason, but they're still going to need another threat for Patrick Mahomes. Christian Watson, 6'4", ran a 4.3 640, has great size. Again, this is somebody that's going to need to complement the likes of Juju Smith-Schuster. Watson, with North Dakota State, he had 7 touchdowns in 2021. And, I mean, we know that I think that's a Division II school, but the amount of big plays that he's going to be able to make, having one of the best quarterbacks in the league throwing to him, Patrick Mahomes, Christian Watson could be the steal of the draft just based off of him going to a smaller school and people not really seeing him as often as some of these bigger schools. At the 31st overall pick, we are at the Cincinnati Bengals, the Super Bowl runner-up. We know that offensive line was probably their biggest need this offseason, as Joe Burrow was absolutely demolished in the playoffs this year. But they did a very good job in the offseason of signing guys. Like I said, they signed La'el Collins and a few others. So you kind of switch that focus now, and you can kind of play best player available here. But best player available also fits the need at quarterback, which is huge for them as well. Eli Apple's not getting the job done for them. I have them going Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of Washington. Again, he has the prototypical size for a quarterback, played very well for the Washington Huskies last year. Trent should be able to slide in for the Cincinnati Bengals and instantly give a spark to that secondary and help out tremendously against good wide receivers in that division. So finally, we are at our last pick of the draft. That's 32nd overall pick, and we are with the Detroit Lions. I thought about going quarterback here for the Detroit Lions for the simple fact that you have the last pick in the draft. All first-round picks, you get that fifth-year option, and what better way to do that than with doing it with a quarterback so that you still are able to kind of keep those costs down as far as the salary cap goes. But there was one guy left on my board that he is a bona fide first-round pick this year for sure, and he is a playmaker on defense. And, again, that's something that the Detroit Lions need. They took Kayvon Thibodeau in this mock at 2 overall. At 32 overall, I had the Detroit Lions taking Daxton Hill, safety out of Michigan. This is a guy who, when you watch the Michigan Wolverines, he shows up on tape. He's all over the field. This is a playmaker for sure. We know that the Lions used a top 3 pick. It was about a year or two ago on a cornerback in Jeff Okudah. Hasn't really panned out, but you bring in a Daxton Hill. Maybe Jeff Okudah is able to get to what we thought he was going to be, and now all of a sudden you have a bona fide secondary that's going to be able to go against some very good competition. So with the Detroit Lions, you have them take Kayvon Thibodeau, a absolute electric edge at 2 overall, and then you take an electric safety in Daxton Hill at the end of the first round. I think that just makes this Detroit Lions defense so much better. So that ends me playing GM for all 32 teams in this Mock Draft Monday episode. As I said, next week is going to be an episode where I start introducing trades that I can definitely see happening in the draft. Again, the draft is 17 days away. And I also want to tell you that all of this is leading up to Sunday, April 24th at 9 p.m. Darrell Owens, James Brown, Lamonte Thomas, who else do we have? Rob Johnson, Jay Quimby, Ty Montgomery. All of us are going to be giving you a LegacyMaker Sports Network draft special where we're all going to give our final mock drafts as to what we see. We're going to go into very great detail as to why these guys were picked, where they were, how they're going to make the teams better that they go to. So just be on the lookout for that. Again, that is April 24th at 9 o'clock. So that's coming up. But again, this was Mock Draft Monday. I will see y'all next Monday at 8:15 for the second episode.
LegacyMaker, the All Sports Network.